June of 1972, I made it known that this party was ready to initiate work with Fine Gael to provide such an alternative. There followed the policy discussions which resulted in the statement of intent. That statement was debated and ratified democratically by the Administrative Council and the Parliamentary Party. Subjected to a smear campaign. Many of the older people here remember in 1945 and 1948 that there were those of particularly the Fianna Fáil party who stood up, just as I'm standing here this morning, telling you, oh, well, the Labour Party are all right, but they're gone a bit red. The Labour Party are all right, but they're gone way out left. Yes, we're gone out left. Because the ills of this country need that we should have radical policies.
The tax on prices on foods is going to be scrapped. So you'll canvass for us too, won't you? Thanks very much. We have Tom Byrne and Liam Kavanagh, right? Yeah. And one of the things we're committed to in any case is a reduction of food prices by taking off the value-added tax. So if you think that that's a good thing, maybe you'd also think of voting for the Labour Party.
There is an alternative government elected. They will have a tremendous amount of work to do. We'd ask the cooperation of you, the workers, and the trade unions to give us that cooperation.
I think they will accept socialism in accordance, as I want to promote it, with the traditions and the culture, the heritage of our country.
We face in the motion that's before you, there are two dimensions to it. There is the social fund and there is the regional fund. If the European community wants to set itself up as a new economic imperialist entity, it couldn't be doing better than how it's developing.
Over the years, we've asked for things in our own ways, disagreed about how we should do it, but asked for things: better housing, better care of old people, better education, better hospitals, better health services. And always we were told, I certainly was told, over 25 years, that we're a poor country and we can't afford to give these things. Now, while I don't agree that we're a poor country, it's simply that we have 75% of the wealth held by 5% of the people. Leaving that aside, the Labour movement now, the Irish people now, can abandon once and for all the bail box. This is one of the richest countries in the world.
Brendan brought in a whole lot of changes of a radical kind. He introduced old age pensions at 66, whereas it used to be 70. In fact, the intention was to bring it down to 65. It has never been changed since. He introduced a deserted wives allowance, an unmarried mother's allowance, an allowance for single women at 58, all of which were not there before. These were practical, practical achievements and of considerable benefit to the people, whereas most of the theoretical people, they'll talk about social reform or about doing this or doing that or educational reform, but they do nothing about it.
Well, first of all, he had integrity. Now, that's a phrase that's used idly sometimes, but it fitted him perfectly. He was a man of integrity, real, genuine integrity. That's the first point. Now, apart from his undoubted compassion, which has been referred to, he was also a very good politician. He spoke very well in the House. I agree fully with what has been said here. I've seen him do it impromptu numerous times. Very underestimated man in that respect, as was Liam Cosgrave. And in my view, history will record that particular partnership of Cosgrave Taoiseach and Corish Taoiseach as heading up a relatively good coalition government. They came together on a very pragmatic 14-point programme, and they stayed together for 4.5 years and went out in 1977. They went out after their full term had been served. Now, that is good politics.
We found it quite easy to work together. Probably The reason was that we had agreed our programme before the election. It was endorsed by the electorate, and that meant that we had agreed on a programme, the people had supported it, and we proceeded to implement it, which to a large extent we did. The only major problem was the oil crisis, which of course was a major problem at the time. But we weathered that, and in retrospect, the economy, I think, weathered it reasonably well.
So we conclude this tribute to Brendan Corish. I'd say myself this, that if ever I was in trouble and I had to see a TD, he'd be the man I'd go to. He was a man of impeccable credentials in the Labour Party and the trade union movement, who spent his life true to that cause. A man whose integrity, as has been said tonight, was like a great table mountain, high and wide and unmistakable. A man of legendary kindness, great courage, shining honesty. A yesh lov day, greva onam delish ursel.